Principal. So this is about the Great Unbundling. So really thinking about, just for generations, access to knowledge has been pretty much controlled by our institutions, of course, the systems, or by kind of proximity, right? But we can't really disregard what's happening right now. AI is kind of breaking open those systems, and what used to be kind of scarce is now becoming truly abundant. So just thinking about some of these questions, what does it mean for education and for leadership, and thinking about the way we prepare people in moving forward, and how is that going to change? Okay, this idea of intelligent being an infrastructure is kind of no longer kind of that trajectory or destination. Many people are thinking about that shift. Most people are trying to kind of process through, and that's intelligent, right? It used to be something you went somewhere to get, right? A classroom, a campus, a space, a credential, right? And so now this intelligence is kind of being embodied everywhere. And so not only is it everywhere, it's on demand, it's adaptive, it's always available, right? This kind of changes the landscape. And because, because when something kind of becomes an infrastructure, it stops being exclusive. Okay, so we've moved from scarcity to pretty much abundance. And the reality is, for centuries, education has operated on this kind of scarcity. Limited seats, the limited experts, right? Only the experts are captured here at this institution, even limited access. But today, now we're stepping into that abundance. Education is everywhere. We have access 24/7 to instruction, to support, to professional development, to feedback. And that means kind of the barrier is no longer that access, right? And so the barrier now is kind of, how do we get people to use it and to use AI well? So when we think of the concept of tutorings, right, AI tutorings, and how it kind of accelerates humanity and accelerates mastery, again, going beyond the traditional systems, think about kind of a 300-person lecture hall, right? No personalization, no adaptive feedback, and what that looks like. And now kind of compare that to AI, what we have now. And so when we think about supportive learning, pretty much we're talking about immediate feedback, continuous iteration, right? Iteration of tasks. We're talking about personalized pathways to get people where they want to go, and kind of this is about true acceleration. And so the goal isn't kind of removing educators, because we love that human component, but it's about truly amplifying human potential. Okay, I don't like the word dismantling, but really thinking about the university as a product, right? And so the traditional university model would think about, how do we bundle these three buckets together: the knowledge, the networks, and of course the certifications or the credentials. And so for a long time, you couldn't separate them. But AI is kind of pretty much bundling these three buckets into one. And once that happened, I really think universities, our institutions, have to kind of rethink that value add. So now thinking about, how do we unbundle this knowledge, right? It's no longer, our knowledge is no longer behind this gate, right? And so thinking about high quality adaptive explanations now live on open platforms. So we're seeing AI tutors, we're seeing open, learning ecosystems that are popping up, personalized learning kind of trajectories. And so this is pretty much about meeting individual learners where they are and moving right alongside with them. And even thinking about, what are our networks, okay? And so just thinking about the connection. It used to be tied to a physical campus, right? You had to be there to belong. And now we're kind of really shifting that narrative to trust, collaboration. It's happening in this digital third space, whether it be an online community, it could be an open source ecosystem, it could be global collaborations, which you're starting to see a lot of. This is expanding on who gets access and who gets to participate, as well as whose voice matters. So when we think about these credentials and unbundling them, this makes people feel a little uneasy. Degrees are, I don't want to say weakening as gatekeepers. I think what's rising ahead of that, and what we're going to start considering in the future, is these portfolios, these documentations of evidences, these demonstrated mastery of skills, these real world performance actions that you will start to see. And I think verification will become a little different, maybe instant, more visible. And so I think hopefully we'll start to see more of not just this proof of concept, but this process. So I always say there's going to be some type of paradigm shift coming. And you're saying, like, hey, Cassandra, what is the shift that you're thinking of? So we're moving from, of course, this gated monopoly to literally an unbundled future. So where this knowledge can be now just open AI tutors. These networks are kind of these digital communities that you see popping up. These credentials, I remember reading a document, like it was, I want to say 7 years ago, said that the human will be the credentialer of the experience. But we've kind of made a different shift. Now we're thinking about what does credential look like. It may be like the proof of skill or the proof of portfolios. And so I think you're starting to see this already happening in the higher ed space. And I think I want to ask a lot of our higher ed, like, are we ready to design for what this looks like? So to be honest, yes, the labor market, of course, has shifted. And some of the data is telling us, 95% of employers are now kind of that modular skill-based credentials. Just think of that. Employers are saying, show me what you can do. Not just where you went. Now, granted, we do have those institutions that still have the legacy and, bringing people on and bringing others along with them, but kind of thinking about this alignment between the educational space and the workplace reality. So now we're starting to see the rise of the skills signal, right? And that even goes further. So we think of 85% of employers are likely to hire candidates that with recognizable micro credentials. And so that's not just a little tiny shift. That's kind of a transformation. So these portfolios are becoming kind of the money, the currency that's transforming things. Skills are becoming that signal, and learning now has become more continuous in many sectors. Okay, just to make it plain, knowledge is now everywhere, right? And so kind of thinking of this major question that we kind of have to sit with, if knowledge is everywhere, what is the purpose of the university? Now, granted, there is so many. I've been to the university. I love the university. I love learning. I'm always in a university, whether I'm teaching, I'm a learner, I'm a continuous learner, lifelong learner. But, I just want us to kind of push back and think about, it's just truly about redefining our value. And the job of the institution is not just to deliver information anymore, right? Of course, we are always, as higher ed, building critical thinkers, create these environments where people will feel seen and supported, and as well as values. And we're helping to guide the learner, right? Zone of proximal development, on navigating this kind of true abundance, But I do think that we can do this. We can think about what this future looks like, but only if we're willing to rethink our systems and not pretty much protected. I hope these tips help. Give me any feedback, any questions. What are your thoughts? I'll talk to you later. Bye.